bit of background in relation to Hurricane Beryl. Hurricane Beryl was not a normal storm. It has broken so many records. Beryl was the earliest Category 4 and 5 hurricane on record. It formed farther east in the tropics than any other hurricane before. It's the fastest intensification over 24 hours for an Atlantic storm that we've ever seen this early in the year. It spent 4.5 days as a major hurricane, and that also set a new record. So Hurricane Beryl was a huge hurricane, one that was unprecedented in terms of its timing. And so when we talk about the impact of Hurricane Beryl, it's very important that we keep in context how large a storm this was and how lucky we were as a country and how blessed we've been as a country to have it stay offshore. But even with it staying offshore, it would have been an important and very, very devastating storm in terms of the wind and the rain effect. In terms of the hurricane, as we've been saying, as everyone has said, and you will know, its impact has been very, very strong, and the most damage we've seen have been in St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, and Manchester, where thousands of homes have been damaged and in some cases destroyed. We've had significant damage to roads, bridges, and public facilities, and we are doing assessments. And you're going to hear a lot more about those assessments and the work that is being done. Today we are going to have with us Minister Desmond McKenzie, our Minister of Local Government and Community Development, and we're also going to be joined by Minister Pernell Charles Jr., who's our Minister of Labor and Social Security, who just joined us, and we have both of their PSs here in the room. We also have the head of ODPEM, who will also be doing a presentation this morning. So we're going to be spending quite a bit of time going through how we have responded to this hurricane. So in terms of some of the reports that we do have, 38% of public hospitals sustained some damage, and the estimates are coming in. As I said, you will hear more about those estimates. We're also very concerned about our farming communities and our fisher folk. A lot of them sustained significant damage. Crops were wiped out. So our farmers are definitely suffering quite a bit right as we speak, and our fisher folk too. A lot of them lost their vessels and their pots and their nets, and it's we're going to have to provide support there. In addition to that, schools, at the last estimate, 100 schools have been damaged, and we know that this could increase because the assessments are currently being done. There is one area that we've not spoken enough about, which is in relation to a concern that several Jamaicans have in relation to price gouging. And in that respect, there is an order, which is called the Trade, Sale of Goods During Period of Declaration of Disaster Area, Hurricane Beryl Order 2024. And this order is aimed at preventing price gouging. It speaks to the fact that that will not be accepted, and it also speaks to the fines that would be imposed on anyone who has done it. So there is a order that has been done in relation to price gouging, which is very important, and it is done under the Trade Act also. In terms of restoration efforts, just in terms of an update, electricity restored to 84% of customers. The JPS is saying that by Saturday, 97% of all persons across the island will have electricity restored, which is very interesting and very important for us to point out that this is good given the circumstances. And I started by speaking about Beryl and the impact of Beryl and how strong Beryl was and how record-breaking Beryl was. And so 97% by Saturday, we're encouraged by that number. We have urged the JPS to move as quickly as it can. The government has said that if we need to, we will be willing to put in to solicit assistance from overseas. They have indicated that at this time, they do not need any external assistance. They have a special team of 300 that will be going into St. Elizabeth specifically to work on restoration efforts in that area because, as you know, St. Elizabeth was damaged quite significantly. In terms of our major health facilities, as of yesterday, 90% of hospitals and major health facilities had their electricity restored. 65% of water supply has been restored across the country. As many are aware, a lot of our pumping stations need electricity. And so as we see more of our areas getting electricity, you will see those numbers increasing also. In terms of mobile phone, and this was a big concern, and I know it's so hard when you have a family member who is in one of the affected area and you can't call, or you're in an affected area and you can't tell your family how you're doing. And the telecoms have been working really hard to restore connectivity. As at this morning, the update I have from Flow is that they have 85% coverage across Jamaica. And in terms of Digicel, they have informed me that they are at 88% coverage as at this morning, and they are continuing to work to get that up. Yesterday, the Prime Minister would have announced the REACH program, which is focused on relief and recovery. And the key elements of that are about sustainability. And as we speak to relief and especially recovery, it is important that we do this in a sustainable manner. As we all know, this hurricane has come at the start of the hurricane season. We still have several months to go, and all of the meteorologists have said that it's going to be a very active season, and we are going to see several hurricanes. So there is a likelihood that we would have another wind event or hurricane or any kind of system near to us. And we have to keep that in mind as we do the recovery efforts. And the Prime Minister has been very clear that this has to be sustainable. Climate change is here. Climate change is real. If we look at the waters and we put our foot in the water off the coast of Jamaica, you're going to see it is warmer than it has ever been. You don't need scientists to tell you that. You feel it when you go out there. We feel it every day when we're walking around in Jamaica. The heat is real, and that is spurring stronger hurricanes, and it is something that we have to be mindful of. And so as we do the rebuilding effort, it is going to have to be in a sustainable manner, because we can't keep having to replace roofs year after year, weather event after weather event. We are going to have to build back better than we were before. And so in terms of the REACH program, there were several elements that were announced. There is a $4 million allocation to every constituency, and that's for immediate relief and recovery efforts. And so that's very important. I know there were some news items that said it was for roof. It is not for the replacement of roofs. It is actually for immediate relief efforts. So getting care packages, getting food, getting water, getting other important supplies to those who need it desperately. In terms of that, also just noting that an additional $3 million will be provided for constituencies where there was severe damage. And so it's $4 million per constituency, but could be up to $7 million if there was severe damage in that constituency. The MPs were urged again by the Prime Minister to ensure proper accountability for the funds, ensuring that it goes to those who need it, irrespective of who they support, where they live, who they are. So every Jamaican matters here, and anyone who needs assistance will be given that assistance, and all of these funds must be accounted for. The Prime Minister also noted that the Ministry of Labour and Social Security will intensify their distribution of care packages. They are here this morning. They will speak to that much more. Another concern that we had was in relation to dengue, and the Ministry of Health and Wellness is ramping up its activities around dengue mitigation, because as you know, after a weather event like this, there will be lots of pools of water around the country, and that will lead to increased breeding of mosquitoes, and that is a concern that we have, and so support is being provided there. In terms of medication availability, the Ministry of Health and Wellness issued some advisories yesterday in relation to, for example, insulin and how long it can last. They did note it has a 30-day shelf life. For those who have medication that needs to be refrigerated, speak to the pharmacist or go to a hospital and you will be able to get support. The NHF is ramping up its support to the hospital networks, a public system, to ensure that everybody has access to their needed medication. In terms of the DART, the Disaster Assistance and Recovery Team of the Jamaica Defense Force, they will be deployed to areas with severe damage. And the focus, again, in any kind of restoration effort is to build stronger, more resilient homes in Jamaica. In terms of support for those who have been affected, we have a new website that has been launched. It's disasterfund.opm.gov.jm, and that fund was developed, and I should say the website was developed in under 2 days. And I have to thank Ambassador Duchant from the Amber Group, who said, I will do whatever I need to do. I will do this free of cost to assist the government in putting this together. And we thank him for that kind of support. We cannot do it alone as government. And so we rely on the private sector, and the Amber Group has been a good supporter of not the government really, but the people of Jamaica. And so we thank Ambassador Duchant, who is here with us this morning, for all that he has done to get that up. And that was necessary because, as you know, whenever there's a disaster anywhere in the world, you have entities that will establish themselves to receive funds. Those funds invariably do not get to those who have been affected. And so it was very important for us as government to have a legitimate Government of Jamaica site that could be used to collect donations, especially the cash donations that are coming in from around the world. And that's why disasterfund.opm.gov.jm was established, so that we could do so. And so anyone who wants to donate funds from around the diaspora, around the world, someone who just visited Jamaica one time and fell in love and sees what Beryl has done to us and wants to support, they can go there and they can easily provide their support. And speaking to the private sector again, and the importance of the private sector, the NCB also launched their Build a Better Jamaica Fund. The Honorable Michael Lee Chin was here in this very room launching it 2 days ago, and that fund is aiming to raise $300 million from the private sector and Friends of Jamaica in order to assist in disaster relief and recovery efforts. Again, we cannot do it alone, and I have to thank all of the many NGOs that are working across the country that have been supporting the government in our efforts to bring food to the people who have been affected and to bring supplies to the people who are affected. It is very, very much welcomed, and we thank all of you for everything that you have done to support this effort. And we are coordinating much more the offers of relief that are coming in. Many governments have offered relief. Many NGOs and international organizations have also offered relief, and we are working collaboratively in government with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the PIOJ, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, and of course led by the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development through ODPEM, to ensure that all of the giving is coordinated, that we are actually getting what we need. We have a needs list which specifies what is needed, and that is what is being communicated around the world, so that we actually get what is needed for the recovery and relief efforts that we are undertaking. I want to thank all the first responders that have worked throughout the hurricane. A lot of Jamaicans, they weren't able to be with their families. They were at the command center, out in the field, at shelters working. And that's the only way that as a country we can withstand a storm like this, is if everyone plays their part. And we have to thank all of those who played their part. Community members across Jamaica joined hand in trying to clear roads and assist the NWA and the government as best as they could to move things forward as quickly as possible. We thank them. We thank all the volunteers across Jamaica who are helping, providing food and shelter, and all the donors that have given and all those who will give. I have a lot more to say, but I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to invite our Minister of Local Government and Community Development to come forward to give his update, and he will be followed by the head of ODPEM, or acting head of ODPEM. Mr. Thompson will also come to give an update on the damage assessments, which are very important. And then after that, I will come back to the podium and introduce the Ministry of Labor team for their updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, colleague Minister, Permanent Secretaries, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I want to first of all to say a big word of thanks to the team who over the last week worked feverishly to get Jamaica in a state of readiness, and I want to use this post-cab meeting this morning to say that the country was well prepared for the advent of the hurricane. Information was readily available. The public was kept abreast. The only complaint that one could make was that there was too much information being passed to the public, and we have seen the benefit of that information because many Jamaicans took heed. One area of concern in this post-care briefing is that the targeted communities that we are aware of, places like Port Royal, New Haven, other such communities that are prone to flooding. Efforts was made both at the political level, at the local level, to encourage residents in many of these communities to leave. The national arena was open, facilitated by the Red Cross to accommodate residents from Port Royal and the Bull Bay community in the corporate area. Nobody from Port Royal. The buses left empty. As the minister said earlier on, this is just the beginning of the hurricane season. And I am urging Jamaicans, as we've been doing in the early warnings, to accept and to act responsible in terms of the requests that are made as it relates for persons to leave certain communities during the time when it becomes necessary. I want to spend a few minutes on the effects of the hurricane on the local government infrastructure. And it is estimated that over some 500 municipal roads were affected by the passage of the hurricane. Bridges that are under the direct control of local government was also affected. And in some cases, the National Works Agency and the local authorities worked to ensure restoration of a number of roads across the country. About 70% of the municipal roads have been cleared, or access has been made possible on a number of these roads. There are still major challenges in St. Thomas and in sections of St. Elizabeth and Clarendon, and I know the efforts are being made to create more access to many of these community roads that are still impossible. It is important that the country recognize that the reason why we have been able to respond in such an effective way, it is because of the collective response of government, working collectively as one government in responding to the needs of persons who are badly affected in various communities across the country. So, as I said before, at least 70% of the municipal roads have been made accessible, whether to back to normality or making it accessible by virtue of one-way traffic. But that is a significant improvement. We have seen in parishes of St. Thomas, Portland, Clarendon, Manchester, and St. Elizabeth. Those are the parishes that experience the greatest amount of damage as it relates to our road infrastructure. Not only our roads are affected, but at least 4 of our infirmaries, Westmoreland, Trelawney, Hanover, St. Anne, and St. Elizabeth, those infirmaries were affected. The St. Anne infirmary still occupying a school that had been used, and once they would have completed the work that is necessary, they will return back to the infirmaries. Markets were also affected, and we saw where damage was done to the Falmouth, Mandeville, Lucy, and Old Harbour Market. And the government, earlier on this year, had announced a $500 million program for the repairs of markets across the country. We will move that process forward, and we will give priorities to those markets that were affected by the hurricane. The other area that I want to touch on relates to the work of the Jamaica Fire Brigade and the National Solid Waste Management Authority. A lot of fallen trees across the country. Roads were blocked because of fallen trees. And the National Solid Waste Management Authority, over the last couple of days, have intensified its island-wide tree removing program, working alongside the Jamaica Fire Brigade, and we have seen the results of that. I know that there are still areas that we are trying to reach in terms of cutting of trees, etc., but this work will take some time. I want to stress the importance of our shelters. There are still about 10 shelters which are presently in operation, and more than 100 persons are occupying some of these shelters. Now, we will not deactivate a number of shelters until we are in a better position to make a determination as to what will happen to those persons who are presently in the shelters. We'll be working closely with the Ministry of Labor and Social Security to ensure that those persons who are in the shelters, and a lot of these shelters that are occupying these persons are persons whose home has been damaged severely or has no home at all. And we will be doing a quick assessment as to see how we are going to treat with those cases and what are the arrangements that we will make to provide some temporary residence for them until we can put the necessary things in place to ensure that at least they are comfortable. The National Disaster Council, when we launched that meeting in St. Anne, is officially in operation. I will be convening a meeting of a working committee of the council shortly for us to have a review as to where we are and the next steps which are to be taken. But let me use this opportunity in saying to Jamaicans that you have been good. Many people have responded in a positive way. And I would not want at this stage of the game for persons to become complacent and for persons who, for want of creating mischief, to be giving false information and to be painting a false picture of the government's response. I can speak about Gilbert because I was actively a part of the work in Gilbert. This room that we are presently in Gilbert was where the cabinet used to meet. But this was used as a storeroom during Gilbert. And I know the efforts that was made during Gilbert. And I've seen in this hurricane the response of the government of Prime Minister Andrew Holness is as such that hardly anyone, it would take somebody who has devious intentions to question the performance of the administration. And one of the good things I want the country to know, the JICA communication system that was used for the first time was able to work effectively, 70% right across the country, that gave live information to the ODPEM almost on a daily basis during the system. And this is something that we have never had before. In many events, it took us 3-4 days to get information. Now we were able, even during the passage of the system, to be getting information. We were able to stay at the base and look at areas where the system was down. I know concerns was raised about the Alley Bridge. The early warning systems did work, but the magnitude of the rainfall created real problems for the people living in that area. And as I said before, the government is working. The Prime Minister made some announcements yesterday, and we'll be working further to enhance what the Prime Minister said and to offer the country a hope that we will restore as quickly as possible and to build back. But this is not the first, and this will not be the last. And I'm hoping that we will be spared any significant events for the remainder of the season. But I urge Jamaicans, continue to have hope, continue to have faith in the work of your government, led by Prime Minister Andrew Holness. I thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask the Honourable Colonel Charles Jr. He has to get back to Clarendon, especially because, as you know, that was one of the hardest hit areas in Jamaica, and they need a lot of support. And I'm asking and urging for a lot of the donor communities who are working in Jamaica to also look at the Clarendon communities that have been very hardly hit. And we know sometimes, the donors know certain communities, are aware of, have been in other communities, and so they will concentrate a lot of efforts there, but there is need, especially in Clarendon, for a lot of support. And so I invite the Honourable Colonel Charles Jr. to come, and then we'll move to ODPEM.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning. Colleague Minister, Permanent Secretaries, Ambassador, colleagues. Yes, I've lost my voice, but I'm trying my best as it is. Just to pick up where you ended, Minister, definitely we have an issue in terms of just the contextual understanding of the impact. Minister Mackenzie knows, because he has been everywhere, so he has seen it, but several others have only seen and heard of Some areas in St. Elizabeth, Portland, Cottage, Rocky Point, but there are several others. There's Gale, there's Alley, there's Water Lane, Racecourse, Gibtown, Lioneltown, that have been impacted in similar ways. And so we must remember them and their families at this time as well. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security is focused on ensuring that we carry through on our commitment in terms of the response and the relief efforts. My permanent secretary is here, Permanent Secretary Colette Roberts Risden, and herself and the team have been effectively pushing to ensure that we go across the country. We are the lead for the Humanitarian Assistance Committee under the National Disaster Risk Management Act. And in that regard, we have been coordinating the immediate response, collaborating across government and collaborating with non-governmental organizations as well. Just to give an update, we have been proactive, and in being proactive, in preparation for the storm, the ministry took measures by pre-positioning supplies in parishes. We utilized St. Anne and Manchester, and we also ensured that our parish offices, those that have storage capacity, were well stocked with essential relief supplies. In addition, we took out lines of credit totaling approximately $15 million activated across 8 parishes to enable us to be able to have swift access and immediate response in terms of resources. The response so far has been led on the ground by our dedicated team. I want to take the time just to thank the entire team from the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the teams from the other ministries, local government, education, health, that have been out there working with us side by side, the non-governmental organizations, Food for the Poor, Red Cross, and others that have been with us, going from house to house to really see that we can promptly deploy island-wide and to deliver immediate relief supplies and to conduct the initial damage assessments. So far, with our partners and volunteers, we have been able to provide close to 6,000 care packages, which doesn't include those coming from our NGOs. And we've provided almost about 800 tarpaulins, 500 mattresses, and this is complemented, as I said, with the aid from NGOs who have also been with us house to house. We have completed so far approximately 2,000 household assessments, and we are collating the numbers. It's challenging, particularly because of those areas where communication is completely down. So for our officers that are going into or who are in Clarendon and some areas of St. Elizabeth, they cannot communicate on either of the providers. And so it has been difficult. So we expect that over the next couple of days, we'll be in a much better position to give more accurate data. But as it is now, as I said, more than 6,000 packages, close to 800, over 700 tarpaulins, and the assessments have been done. There is much, much more needed. Let me just state that. We understand that. And there are several communities and households that will hear me and say, but you're saying all of this and we haven't seen you. It has been a difficult task. I myself have been on a street providing relief, returned to that street the next day to hear multiple persons say, we haven't seen you, where have you been? And we did distribution on that exact street. And one of the reasons is the team is moving as fast as it can. So if you are not there, they may not be able to provide the support to you, but they will return. The effort is to get across the network and to utilize as many community leaders as possible, to work with the members of parliament, who I know some have said, listen, we're not hearing from the teams. That's because of the difficulty in terms of communication. I myself have tried to call some, they've tried to call me, and once I'm below Hayes, I'm out. When the Prime Minister came on the tour with us, there was just no communication that could go to him. So we had to actually get him out as quickly as possible because he had been in our zone for several hours without being able to receive or give any communication. So that in itself was a challenge. So the situation for us is ongoing, it is evolving, and we ask that you be patient and understanding, particularly with the officers who are interacting with you. They are engaging with multiple persons, and I know you are frustrated. They themselves are absorbing all of your pain. And so I just ask for your understanding as you interact with the social workers. In Kingston and St. Andrew, flooding was reported, particularly in the New Haven and Burger Gully, where multiple houses were affected. 37 shelters were opened, housing 357 persons, with only one shelter remaining active at Friendship Brook. Bulk food supplies were provided to marooned communities in Hall's Delight and Westphalia, as well as two shelters at the National Arena. In St. Thomas, 8 shelters housing 176 persons. The household damage assessments are ongoing in that area in multiple communities, with significant relief supplies already distributed, 789 food packages, 50 tarpaulins, and 8 mattresses. Of course, these figures are evolving, because even now as we speak, our team is on the ground. In Portland, we saw 26 houses sustaining roof damage, 1 completely destroyed, and there are several others that we have not yet been able to assess. Ongoing assessments are ongoing, and distributions are also in progress across numerous communities. So far, in those areas, up to 100 food packages, tarpaulins, more than 20 tarpaulins, and mattresses and hygiene packages have also been distributed. In St. Mary, we've seen extensive damage reported across several communities, with 407 assessments completed as at the date of this report, and substantial relief supplies distributed, 200 food packages, more than 40 tarpaulins, mattresses, hygiene kits as well there. In St. Anne, we saw minimal damage to houses being reported, but we had greater impact on the farmlands. Relief supplies have been distributed there, as well as assessments been ongoing, and 300 food packages. For Trelawney, multiple communities are now under assessment, with 95 being completed and significant supplies already distributed. We have on record more than 400 food packages being distributed in those areas. For St. James, 23 shelters were opened, housing 176 persons. Assessments continue in that area, with considerable relief supplies being distributed, more than 200 food packages. In Hanover, there are ongoing assessments and distributions which are in progress there, with significant challenges due to the disruptions in electricity and telecommunications across some parishes, but particularly Hanover as well, and more than 300 food packages as of this report. For Westmoreland, we had 332 food packages being issued, 160 assessments having been completed despite the adverse conditions there, and more than 250 food packages. For St. Elizabeth, there's a difficulty in just traversing the area. So there has been a total of close to 100 assessments completed, many more now being done, more than 400 food packages distributed, along with over 300 tarpaulins, 150 mattresses, blankets, hygiene kits, and of course the most urgent need for bedding and tarpaulins is in that area and Clarendon. Assessments there are ongoing. I wanted to stop there to say that there is a significant difficulty in traversing some of the areas. So we are getting the assistance of JDF, of NWA, to clear and also to support in our assessment efforts and distribution efforts. In Manchester, we see where there's a total of 86 assessments having been completed so far. There, we've been able to move around more, so there's about more than 500 food packages distributed, 55 tarpaulins, 44 hygiene kits, 11 mattresses, water and other things also being distributed in that area. Several farmers too, so water boots, have also been distributed. The parish is still affected, though, by intermittent heavy rain, we find, and the lack of electricity and poor telecommunication makes it challenging. For Clarendon, there's significant damage in the southern section of that parish, especially Portland Cottage, Rocky Point, Mitchelltown, Canaan Heights, Palmer's Cross, and others, many others. There are multiple communities that are now being assessed with ongoing distribution of more than 700 food packages, 190 tarpaulins, 125 mattresses, and several hygiene kits and water. Lastly, for St. Catherine, extensive assessments are now underway across all of the constituencies in St. Catherine, with substantial relief supplies being distributed. We have more than 300 food packages there and several tarpaulins and mattresses and hygiene kits. Let me just conclude by just highlighting the invaluable support of our international development partners. The United Nations, the World Food Program, Inter-American Development Bank, USAID, and UNICEF, to name a few, have offered assistance in various forms, including technical support, supplies, cash transfers, and logistical aid, amongst others. So we are working with them through the structured programs that are already set up for us to ensure that there is as effective and productive coordination of this relief effort. Ladies and gentlemen, family, we understand your frustration. We understand that several children are now scared. Understand that several elderly and seniors are concerned about their medicines, concerned about where they are staying tonight. We are working assiduously, on the go, 24 hours a day to make sure that we can provide you with as much relief as possible. As Minister Mackenzie said, as our Prime Minister said, we are working across government, one government, collaborating as best as possible to provide as much support to the people of Jamaica. We are committed in the Ministry of Labour and Social Security to leaving no one behind. And so we want to encourage all Jamaicans, particularly those who may be in a better position, to join in the work of rebuilding this nation. If you can assist, reach across. Do not wait for a neighbor to ask. Many need the support, but cannot muster up the voice to say, please help me. This is the time for you to step up and to lead in your community. This is the time for you to reach across, open your eyes, open your ears, and understand what giving is about. So I want to encourage you all, those who can volunteer, get out of your house and volunteer. Those who have supplies that can be donated, this is the time. Not next week, today. Those who can offer their skills and expertise to help in this rebuilding effort, this is your opportunity, this is your platform. One family, one community, one Jamaica. We understand the challenges faced by several. I want to remind you before I leave of the phone numbers. If you need any assistance, we're asking for you to reach out to your local parish office at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, or to contact the ministry, 876-922-8000-29. That's 876-922-8000-29. And so you can also contact us. Several persons have been contacting us through social media channels, particularly those who say, listen, we hear that you are here, but you have missed us. We are listening to you. Even if we don't respond immediately, we have that information and we are acting on that information. Let me close by just extending again the gratitude on behalf of the government of Jamaica to all the dedicated teams working tirelessly in the field, and to our international partners and to our friends here who are working together as one for us to rebuild and to emerge stronger from this disaster. Thank you. One love.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that very comprehensive report. And I'm going to move quickly to the Acting Director General of the ODPEM, or Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, Mr. Richard Thompson.
Thank you very much, Minister. Ministers, permanent secretaries, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As you can hear my voice, I'm a little bit under the weather. I'm just giving a quick report as to where we are in terms of our post-disaster assessment. Our post-disaster and damage assessment, we started that activity immediately after the passage of Hurricane Beryl, when the all clear was given. The team has gone out into the southern parishes. We extended our assessment from St. Thomas all the way along the southern coastline and also into St. James. We have now completed our activities in St. Thomas, and we are now focusing mainly in the most affected areas. The damage assessment, as I said, is being done along the southern side, and the team is working out of the National Emergency Operations Center, and that is being coordinated in its totality by the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. So the team include in the current damage assessment outside of the other sectors that are being assessed, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, the National Emergency GIS team, which is the Geographic Information Science team. We also have some international support within the NEOC in terms of the damage assessment, the initial damage assessment that we're doing, which include the World Food Program, USAID, BHA. We have support from the Jamaica Defense Force and the Jamaica Fire Brigade providing drone support. So we're using all the technologies now that we have at our disposal to ensure that we're getting adequate information to influence our damage assessment. We also did very early after the passage of the hurricane aerial reconnaissance assessment, which was supported by the Jamaica Defense Force, and the ODPEM team was a part of that. The areas being assessed are being mapped extensively by our National Emergency GIS Response Team, and that will help to influence and compile the report, that the overall damage assessment report that will be submitted to my Minister, Honorable Minister Mackenzie, and also in terms of going forward after that information is submitted and onto the cabinet, to also influence what is called our DALA report, which is a damage and loss assessment report that is always compiled by the Planning Institute of Jamaica after we have been impacted by a major system. So the PIOJ would take that and assess all sector information and compile that in our overall assessment report for the country. We concentrated our efforts on a lot of the impacted communities, especially out in St. Elizabeth, given that St. Elizabeth is the most impacted area. Yesterday and the day before, the team went out into Southfield, St. Elizabeth. We went out into Ballards Valley, Treasure Beach, Malvern. In Clarendon, we were in Rocky Point, Long Hill in St. James. There was some impact as well in St. James, even though not spoken to highly. Long Hill, Anchovy, Mount Airy, Chester Castle in St. James, White House, Westmoreland, Belmont, Westmoreland, and McAlphin in Westmoreland. And the team is now going out into Treasure Beach today and Alligator Pond to do some assessment. So the work continues, and what we are trying to ensure is that all the information is collected, all the impacted communities are visited and assessed, so we can get a true picture as to what has happened, so that can influence our damage assessment and our post-disaster needs assessment. So that is it for me now. That's all I have to say this morning. And the assessment continues, and we will keep you updated as to where we are with the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson, for that update. And as we move towards some questions, just reminding 6,000, the numbers had changed from yesterday, 6,000 care packages have been distributed. Remember that each care package has enough food for a family of 4 that can last for 4 days. And you heard about the tarpaulin and the mattress distributions on the part of government. I should note that care packages aren't only being distributed by government, because the government uses its network. So sometimes some of the care packages are given to Food for the Poor or to the Salvation Army, and they distribute on behalf of the government. So not all of it goes out from the Ministry of Labor team. You also heard of the use of drone technology. In terms of doing the damage assessment, the JDF has been helping. They've been doing aerial shots so that we can pick up where roofs are damaged and other damage to infrastructure aerially too. So we're using a lot of technology as a part of this assessment. And then on the ground, you have Ministry of Labor going house to house and actually documenting who has been affected. And that's very important work, because as we said, and as the Prime Minister said yesterday, that any kind of recovery assistance has to go to those who have been damaged. And so the work that's being done on the assessments and the house-to-house assessments is critical, because that's what will feed into the distribution of any kind of resources. Also, yesterday there was a call that I was on with our international development partners. There were 55 people on that call from different entities. So all these entities around the world want to help. And what we're doing is making it as coordinated as we can so that we can get that assistance here. And so I'm going to hand over to our lovely press secretary, Naomi Francis, to do the questions from the media.
Good morning, Minister. Morning, everyone. And Minister, you're so kind. Thank you so much. Just ahead of getting the questions from on the floor from reporters here, just following up on the point you made last, Minister, there is a question concerning exactly what the needs are for those who would like to assist. Is it mostly tarpaulins, clothing, so that they'd be able to find a central place to send it to possibly?
Sure. We have developed a needs list, and that needs list was developed with the Ministry of Health, with the Ministry of Labor, with Ministry of Local Government and ODPEM, and right now it's not really closed. It is, for example, we need a lot of food items, which we have put on a separate list, and we have local distributors who are actually wanting to support food, and we're putting in a mechanism today in order to receive that food. We have things for the agricultural sector, which is key. They need a lot of assistance, from seeds to irrigation systems to rebuild what they have. All of our greenhouses in St. Elizabeth were destroyed, all of them. And so we would need equipment to rebuild that. So what we will do is we'll work with our Amber Group friends to have the needs list placed on the website. So anyone who needs it, and remember the website is disasterrecovery.opm.gov.jm, so that anyone, anywhere in the world who wants to assist will assist with the right items, because sometimes, you may want to help and you send something that's not necessarily needed right now. And so it's important that you follow the needs list.
Thank you, Minister. All right, let's go to Mahiri.
Morning. Mahiri Stewart from Nationwide News here. Seeing that we are now 1 week removed from the passage of Hurricane Beryl, question to both ministers at the stand. Is there any aspect of the government's relief plan or response to the hurricane that you believe could be fine-tuned or improved in the event that Jamaica is hit with another harsh weather system at any point this year or even next?
Well, the answer to that is that we will use the lessons from this one to improve going forward. And I think that is important, because it is going to be difficult for you to plan in advance of a disaster, but what we can look at is the systems that work. And if you ask me how much of the system work, I would say 9 out of 10 of what we put in place work. So we will improve on that. And I believe also what is going to be important is that we are going to be looking to expand our public education. It was not lacking, but I think the more we develop and encourage and educate will help us to improve in the areas.
Oh, you want me to answer too? All right, seeing it from maybe a different angle, I agree that this is a government and an administration that is always wanting to improve. And so we learn from every single situation that we have and we make it better. And remember, we went through COVID. And we learned a lot through COVID, and a lot of the mechanisms being put in place in terms of relief came out of the learnings of COVID. And so, of course, with this one, we're going to learn even more and be better at it. I think one of the things we're going to have to look at is definitely in terms of technology and how we use technology more. One of the things that has hampered a lot of our work as government has been the lack of communication and the coverage from our partners. And we are speaking, as you know, to Digital and Flow on that area. A lot of them were dependent on JPS for electricity. We have to look at how we have other electricity generation facilities that are in place. And so that's one area. We have to look at other areas of communication, how we build redundancy. So if the mobile network is down, what else can we do? And we actually have offers of assistance from overseas for mobile type units that could be deployed in an area that loses connectivity. So there's some key lessons that we've learned, and especially it's just making the system more robust. Because as you saw, Hurricane Beryl was offshore. And look at all the damage. If one does come on shore, you can imagine what that would be like. And so we're thinking in that kind of mindset.
Thank you, ministers. One of the good things that have come really is the fact that we stream this event, and so journalists who are not here have the opportunity to send their questions in. And I do have one from IRA FM, one from RJR Gleaner, and another, I'll tell you soon who that person is. So the one from IRA FM is looking to verify the actual number of persons who have died really as a result of Hurricane Beryl. Minister Bartlett had mentioned also their follow-up is we saw where 2 elderly persons also died after or during Beryl, a woman in Dumfries, as Minister Bartlett had pointed out, and a man from Manchester who the wall fell on him. So in preparation for future major events, what will be done to better protect the elderly?
Well, the numbers that we have, which we are aware of, that 3 persons would have lost their lives during the passage of the hurricane. I believe that we will improve in that area where you speak about the elderly. What we have done is that we have a database of elderly persons in various communities across the country, and we pay special attention to those persons. Now, in the case of one of the persons, I understand that attempts were made, but the person did not respond to the request to be relocated. But it is unfortunate, and as I said before, those are areas that we will continue to improve on. But if the truth be told, is that there has to be a greater appreciation of the dangers that we face during any natural event. We must take some personal responsibility. And you know, when people are out in the middle of a hurricane playing football, it tells you, you know, it speaks how much we are not understanding the danger that we create for ourselves and other persons.
Thank you, Minister. Before I get back to the floor, a question from RJR Gleaner Group. What assessment of the productivity loss as a result of Hurricane Beryl, what does that look like, and who's responsible for coordinating that?
That assessment will be done with the RPM working with the PIOJ, because the PIOJ is the entity that does that overall national assessment on the effects of the disaster. And they have already started using their systems to put that in place. And once that is done, the PIOJ will make that presentation to government.
All right, thank you, Minister. For the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, is there a dollar value so far to the care packages that have been given? And what level of assistance, I think this may be in dollar value too, has been given to the parish of St. Elizabeth in particular?
All right, we are not able to tell you specifically what parish, but what I can tell you is that so far, and these are approximate figures, and please understand that we are in response mode, and the government has been providing the resources. And fortunately or unfortunately, we are not focused on the dollar value. So I will give you approximate figures. So far within the ministry, we have spent over 50 million providing care packages and the lines of credit. We have spent, in terms of tarpaulins and mattresses, and about to spend another $15 to $20 million. And these are approximate figures so far. There will be more that will be spent, because as we speak, we do have more things being ordered. We also have donors, which we have not even begun to factor in those amounts. Thank you.
Thank you, P.S. That's P.S. Collett, resident. P.S. Also, the element, I beg your pardon, Minister, of the level of assistance too. I think they wanted to hone in on the parish of St. Elizabeth, I believe, as well.
All right. Based on what Minister had reported for the parish of St. Elizabeth, we have provided somewhere in the region of about, I think it's somewhere in the region of about 400 care packages. I don't have it up here with me.
Let me check for you.
I think it was about 300 tarpaulins and over 100 mattresses for the parish of St. Elizabeth. And that's not complete, it is ongoing. And we do have a lot of donors, NGOs working in specific areas. What I am explaining is actual GOJ expenditure. So a lot more is being spent in the parishes.
Thank you so much, P.S. Mahiri.
And also the ADPEM would have also spent a significant amount in relief supplies, over some $15 million so far would have been spent by the ADPEM, and they are in the process of procuring more goods and services to provide assistance in the areas that are required.
Thank you, Minister.
Yeah, question to Minister Mackenzie. How would you gauge or rate the performance of the country's councillors and mayors in light of the passage of Hurricane Beryl?
Well, I must tell you that the response of the municipal corporations have been good. All the mayors and the councillors have been very proactive. They played a critical role, especially amongst the homeless population. Their drain cleaning program was also good, and based on the information that we have been getting in. So I would say that the response of the municipal corporations, all our shelters were managed, and the shelter managers were all in place. The disaster coordinators working out of the municipal corporations, working with the ADPEM, was on the ground. So I would rate the performance of the elected representatives very highly in the response to the hurricane, before and during and after.
Ministers, I have one from a media entity here, but I think it primarily is more agriculture, but maybe you can also weigh in on the issue of insurance. So the question is, how many farmers have taken up the crop insurance coverage, and to what extent crop insurance and fisherfolk insurance will take care of some of the losses? But I think that's primarily agriculture. But the wider question they're also asking, which is the third question, is what's going to happen to get more people to take up insurance, whether of their homes or crops or otherwise, especially because we are right in dead center of a hurricane season?
That's a very good question. And it's something that as government we're looking at. And as you know, for government, we have done more national type insurance policies like CRIF, where you saw that we got a payment from that. Because we do recognize that a lot of our farmers, a lot of our poorer Jamaicans really don't have the finances to take out insurance. And as government, we recognize that we have to care for everyone, including those who cannot afford insurance. And so those macro policies that we do with big organizations are really geared towards having a buffer, not just for the roads and other infrastructure, but also for those who could not afford insurance. But we do encourage everyone to get insurance in Jamaica. It is something that's very valuable in terms of preserving wealth for individuals, and we encourage it. And the Ministry of Agriculture has been working to look at new parametric policies which would pay out small payments if there is wind above a particular amount or a particular level of water. And as government, we are continuing to look at those more micro policies, because one of the things in terms of the insurance community and also the Ministry of Finance that's been looked at is that issue of microinsurance, especially targeting those who cannot afford a big policy. They have small ones and it pays out irrespective of the level of damage, it gives a payout. And so we're continuing that kind of work, looking at more innovative policies, working with the international insurance interests in Jamaica and overseas to get as much of that in place. And we encourage it because that's the reason why we are confident that we can do the rebuilding, not just because of our international partners, but because we've been able to get some payouts from the policies government has done. And as government has done, we're saying to the Jamaican community, if you can, please take advantage of insurance policies that are in existence.
Thank you, Minister. I have a question from a member of the diaspora who is really asking for a step-by-step walkthrough if there is the possibility of doing online donation through the website. So I see Mr. Savadia here that maybe would be able to help.
In terms of the website, you can go on it, and it's disasterfund.opm.gov.jm, disasterfund.opm.gov.jm. And when you go on that site, you will see a donate button, and you click on that donate button, and it will take you to a field that will ask you for your information, your name, your address, your email address, and you will then be taken to a secure site in order so that you can use your credit card or your debit card and you can donate, and those funds will go directly to ODPEM to facilitate the recovery efforts and buying more care packages and so on. And so anyone from the diaspora, it's a very simple process, and there's a nice surprise at the end. You get an email from a special person at the end of doing this to show how grateful the entire Jamaica is. It's a seamless process. I do know, Press Secretary, if I could, there are many Jamaicans in the diaspora who want to donate. They are reaching out to our missions, to the high commissions, the embassies around the world, trying to assist. Please note that you can reach out to those missions. They will give you some support in terms of the needs list. They all have the needs list, and so they can help you to understand what is best for you to send to Jamaica. When you are sending it to Jamaica, it's going to be very important that you share the manifest so we know what is coming in, so that customs can more seamlessly clear it on your behalf. We have special facilities at customs. We know Jamaicans are going to want to send things home for the recovery effort, and so customs has started and implemented a process to make it smoother for relief items to come into the country. So we're doing everything on our side to facilitate it, and we know our diaspora really want to support us, and we thank them in advance for all that they will do to help us to build back even stronger.
Thank you, Minister. I have a final question, and I'm seeing it just play out a little bit on X in particular. So I'll ask Minister Mackenzie, when is the government, according to these persons who are going back and forth, when is the government coming to eastern and western Jamaica?
Well, that is on the card for various ministers to come. I have a schedule that is filled starting from Friday. So we are visiting all of the areas that are affected.
And if I may, in the report that you would have received from the Ministry of Labour, they were very clear that they've been doing assessments, and this is house-to-house assessments. They've been in every parish. And one of the things that was very instructive to see from their report was St. Mary, Trelawney, Portland, St. Thomas being very, very much prominent in areas that have significant damage. So it may not have been widespread, but in some areas and with some people, they have lost a lot. And so our social workers are out there. So the government is there. Minister Mackenzie, who is coordinating everything, may not be in every parish and can't be in every parish right now and hasn't been able to, but our social workers are out there. All of them are going door to door, taking information on what has happened, and we already have quite a lot of information on those assessments. And as you heard, 2,000 household assessments have already been done. That means the government has gone to 2,000 different homes across Jamaica where we know there has been damage to identify what they need, what their food needs are, what their rebuilding needs are. So we are out there, and you will start seeing Minister Mackenzie out there more with his schedule on the weekend. Thank you. And so thank you, Minister Mackenzie. It's nice to be up here with you. and for everyone, I want to thank you for being here for another post-cabinet press briefing. We will be here again next week discussing what we are doing. I have to say a special thank you to the GIS team that has not rested, that has been out there throughout the storm helping to communicate what has happened, and I thank them for their work in relation to the website also, which you are seeing with where you can do donations. I want to thank the entire OPM team too that has provided a lot of communication support to the various entities across government, and we will continue talking. There's a lot of work to be done, and we are ready to do that work, and so we'll see you next week for another post-cabinet press briefing. Thank you.